Do you love great Australian podcasts? Of course you do. Australians make incredible podcasts. And if you want to stay up to date with the best Australian shows, then check out Oz Podcasts. Look for us on social media and find your new favourite show from the Australian podcast directory on ozpodcast.com.au. That's OZPODCASTS, ozpodcast.com.au. Check it out.
If you like new stuff before anybody else, if you like to keep your finger on the pulse, if you like the future and want to be in it, keep on listening because we'll start in a minute. Techwebcast, the hosts and guests are unsurpassed. Techwebcast, cause technology it moves so fast. Techwebcast, ha, stick around and you're gonna have a blast. Yeah, Techwebcast, ha, ha, Techwebcast. Let's go.
Welcome to episode 299 of the Techwebcast podcast, recorded on the 2nd of August 2014. Techwebcast is recorded every Saturday at midday. Please rate us on iTunes and like us at facebook.com/Techwebcast. Follow us on Twitter at Techwebcast. Your hosts today are Brad, Jody, Steve, and myself, Andrew. And our very special guest today is Daniel Tyson from Ausdroid.net. And we'll be announcing our 3-month free Quick Flicks giveaway with a free Chromecast later in the show. So look forward to that one, Brad.
Yes, indeed. Can't wait for that, mate. Who's going to win?
That is a very good question. We will find out later in the show. Stay tuned.
Yeah, stay tuned. Sounding professional there, Andrew, with the new mic, mate.
Oh, yeah. I've got my new mic on. It's all happening. You know, it's Saturday. It's kind of warm and, you know, the sun's out in Melbourne.
Nice.
So
yes, very
good.
How's your week been, buddy? How's any news you want to report on?
Not really. We've just been working away on a few bits and pieces, really. So, you know, just a steady work week, I guess. Nothing overly interesting to report on. The stuff we've been doing with the Rewind app is coming along really nicely. So it's been a bit of fun. So yeah, it's a good week.
Sounds fun. I checked out that new startup show. I was hanging out with Twitter the other night.
Yeah, that startup show, I believe it's called, which is in Melbourne, and you know, they're going to be interviewing a bunch of different startups and things like that. I actually sent something through to them a couple of weeks ago and have been communicating with them. So yeah, good on them for taking time to have a look at the Melbourne and Australian startup scene and creating a show out of it, and that'll be through YouTube. I think that'll be coming out next 2, 3, 4 weeks, somewhere along there, but we will be sure to let listeners know.
I think episode 1's going to be out on Monday, so I'll put that up on my blog. And
that's soon, okay.
Yeah, Monday will be out, episode 1. What else? Is anything else to report on, Andrew? Anything else?
Oh, not really, Brad. Just working away, same old stuff. What about yourself? How's your week been?
Yeah, good, mate. It's been very cold and windy here, raining and that, which is good.
Yeah, there's been a bit of wind around today, which is good. So who we got on the show today, Brad?
We've got Daniel Tyson from Ausdroid. It's an Android website.
Very good. And Jody and Steve, as always, great to have you guys on. Jody, how's your week been?
Oh, super swell.
Super swell.
I know you love that word. Things are great. Yeah, you know, unfortunately we're going to have a rainy weekend here, but other than that, Jules competing again on Sunday, which should be a lot of fun. Jules, my Belgian Malinois, she got her championship on the 4th of July, so she'll be in a dog show.
Sweet.
We've seen Jules before a few times. She's very, very nice dog.
Yeah. Sure she is.
Depends what side of her teeth you're on.
Sometimes she's noisy.
Is your dog very protective, Jody? Will it bite anyone if anyone comes up to the door or anything like that?
You know, I think Ruger would be more imposing. I think he would be more the one who would bite you.
Oh, wow.
But yeah. But I think Jewel can hold her own.
Good stuff. Well, that's definitely don't break into Jody's house. Steve, how are you, mate? How's your week been?
Oh, pretty good. Talking about startups, I was thinking about that, a show for startups. I'm like, it'd be kind of amazing, like even having Andrew, he makes it super big. I'm like, yeah, we had him on the Techwebcast forever. Yeah, you never know.
You never know, Steve. That,
Yeah, you never know.
We'll see. Hopefully we can get somewhere with some of the apps and things that we're working on.
Yeah, definitely. Some of the apps are great you're working on, Andrew.
Yeah, it'd be great. It'd be really good if we
Like,
can pull something
they were
like that.
sold to Google for $1 billion or whatever,
Also, next week got the
I like that story.
next week we got the big show, Andrew. Showing the show next week.
Yes, we do. 300 shows. So
Yeah.
that is really exciting, obviously, for everyone. All of the guests that we've had on before, and all of the hosts, Steve, Jody, and obviously Jacob and Jen, who are on as well from time to time, which is great. So it'll be really exciting. I think we've got a number of guests for next week as well.
I think we've got a lot of guests coming on, but you said to slow down, which I did. So I've done that. I think yeah.
When you got to about, I don't know, 320 guests, I thought that's probably enough.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it's not
Star-studded.
that many. But anyway, Daniel, how are you, mate? Welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks. Fantastic.
And,
Pretty cold down here in Canberra, so yeah.
Okay, good stuff,
Lovely.
mate. And how's your week been?
Pretty good. It's been pretty busy, and yeah, can't complain about it really.
All right.
It's the way to go.
Good stuff, mate. Good to have you on. Talk about some Android stuff very soon.
Excellent.
Sounds good. Joe, let's get into some news. And I will play this.
Okay. And welcome to Techwebcast News Edition. We've got some interesting stories today. Security research finds some serious exploitable flaws in 14 major antivirus engines like AVG, Bitdefender, ESET, F-Secure. The bottom line is you think you're safe when you use an antivirus program, right? I mean, they're supposed to keep your computer safe from any viruses or Trojans or worms, but sometimes they're not as secure as you think they are. What happens when the engine that runs the antivirus itself has severe exploitable vulnerabilities? Evidently, in a report that was published in the Inquirer Net, a security researcher, Jackson Corrette, has claimed he found exploitable flaws in 14 major antivirus engines used by some of the world's largest security vendors. Evidently, this flaw acts almost like a hole, and it allows the messages to be almost like eavesdropped. So you think you have a private connection, and the entire conversation can actually wind up being controlled by the attacker. Again, it's not a very cool thing, but there's some things that you can do when you're using an antivirus property. So first of all, you shouldn't use the highest privileges possible for scanning network packets and files. You should audit their products. I'm sorry, these are ideas for the AV users and the AV antivirus product. You shouldn't run, if you have any dangerous code, run it under an emulator, virtual machine, or in a sandbox. Obviously, the AV vendors shouldn't trust their own processes. And finally, use SSL or TLS for updating products and digitally sign all files. So I don't know, have you guys heard anything more about this, or have you experienced any problems using any of the antivirus programs?
Well, I use a Mac, so I don't need to worry about it. Yeah, I'm sort of the same. I've got a Mac, and I don't have too many problems. No. But it's interesting with the flaws that they find in these things. And if I put my tinfoil hat on for just a moment, you wonder if maybe someone's found the back door that the NSA use.
It's possible.
Just saying.
Hey, that's interesting, Terry.
Yeah.
I like that.
Well, anyway, in other news, might as well moving right along. If you have an iPad, you can now enjoy free data, text, and voice plans using Freedom Pop. I don't know if you guys have tried it yet, but Freedom Pop announced that it's going to offer 500 megabytes a month of free 4G LTE data for tablets that support the Sprint network, along with direct sales of Apple's iPad mini and Samsung's 7-inch Galaxy Tab 3 on their website. The deal is the same as Freedom Pop's previous offer for smartphones, which includes 500 messages, 200 voice minutes, for free per month as well. If you want, you can pay $7.99 a month for 500 voice minutes and unlimited text, or $10.99 a month for unlimited voice and text. But the 500 megabytes of data still stays the same. Do you think this is a good offer? Do you think it's something that you might want to take advantage of?
Maybe not. I'm happy with what I have at the moment.
Actually, I do have a response on that. I've been doing a little searching on that article, and you got to be really careful when using these types of providers, because actually, if you look, scrutinize these contracts and everything, this is what I came up with. If you use less than 5 megabytes of data in a given month, you'll be charged a 99-cent active status fee. By default, when you reach your final 100 megabytes of data in a given month, they will automatically charge you $10 to fill your plan backup. Now, of course, you can turn that off in settings. And also, Freedom Pop peppers users with additional offers the sign-up process while engaging some classic sneakiness on one page. An offer for a 2 gigabyte per month is advertised as 100% free and selected by default, while the fine print mentions that a charge of $17.99 kicks in after 1 month. Now, this comes from, I believe, Time Magazine Gadgets, I think, section. So you got to be really careful on this type of plan. It sounds awesome. You really need to scrutinize the plan itself, and a lot of it's kind of deceptive. You can't really find, or you got to really search hard to find some of these the fine print.
I think that's an excellent point, Steve. And the other thing too is that it's running on the Sprint network, and the Sprint network, unfortunately, at least here in the U.S., doesn't necessarily reach everywhere. It's not as good, at least in our area, as Verizon coverage or AT&T coverage. So
there you go. Well put, guys. Well done, Steve. A bit of research there is great to see for the listeners. So there you go.
Yeah, good info, Steve. Good on you, mate. Good on you.
Virtual high five.
Okay. Were you saying something? I'm sorry, Steve.
I'm sorry. I said virtual high five. No, just kidding. Go ahead.
Okay. Some more interesting news about Facebook. First, Facebook is ending their gift program, but they're still dabbling in e-commerce. So they're shutting down the digital gifts business, even as they're continuing to experiment with other forms of e-commerce. They dipped their toe in the retail waters several times. 2 years ago, Facebook launched a program that allowed users to buy actual physical goods like wine, cupcakes, toys. That's what we're always buying, right? And have them delivered to friends. The notion was that Facebook knew when somebody's birthday was coming up and could remind their friends that it's time to send them a gift. Well, Facebook shut that program down a year later when sales didn't catch on, but then they continued to sell digital gift cards that could be applied to purchases at a number of retailers. For a while, they also sold physical gift cards that would work at certain stores, but they're winding that service down effective August the 12th. Facebook tested a buy button that would let other companies sell directly to Facebook users through ads on the social network. Top executives say that Facebook is now focused more on helping other companies sell products. I've bought things on Facebook, and I've sent gifts through Facebook. I know, Brad, I know you have. And I have, yeah. It's kind of interesting. It makes it easy as the sender. I don't know, as the recipient. I know sending stuff to you guys in Australia is tough.
I wish Facebook gifts would work here in Australia. That'd be so cool.
Yeah. One of the things, though, with gifts is there's an option, I believe, Jody, to receive a gift and either accept that gift or actually have that, instead of accepting it, turn it into charity so that the whole gift goes to a charity. And while that's a positive thing, and commendable of Facebook, I just wonder whether some people, if I go and buy you, Jody, a nice box of chocolates and a bottle of wine for your birthday, I've got an expectation that you're going to sit back, that night, dig into a few chocolates, get a bottle, and say, hey, this is great, happy birthday, me. Isn't this wonderful? If you've got a button you can just click, bang, turn to charity, I don't know, it's a great gesture again, but I'm not sure if that's actually a positive for the person who's actually buying the gift. Because if I wanted to buy a $30 or $50 charity donation in your name, that's what I'd do.
Right. That's a good point.
Yeah, I got Jody a gift card on there a while back. Did you use it, Jody?
You know what? I'm glad you reminded me. I still have to. I better use it before they stop the e-commerce, right?
You better. Yeah.
I know. Well, especially because we had like a situation today. I don't know if you guys saw, but Facebook went down.
Yeah, I heard about that. Yeah.
And it was for a while. I think it was roughly 30 minutes. And interestingly enough, here in the States, people called the police. They called 911, which is like for an emergency.
Wow.
Yeah, they were freaking out.
Damn.
Yeah. And so on Twitter, some of the law enforcement agencies were saying, hey, Facebook is not a law enforcement issue. Please don't call us. Can you imagine?
It's been kidnapped.
I think
USA.
Wow.
Yeah, it's added to the list of inappropriate
That's so
times to call the police. It's kind of funny.
That's super
All right.
swell.
Well, that was not super swell. That was kind of like an unfortunate, like ignorant thing. But anyway, so our buddy Robert Scoble is in the news. Evidently, he feels that Microsoft should dump the Windows Phone. And, he's always been one of those early adopters. He's the guy you saw his picture in the shower with his Google Glass. and believe me, it was editable and suitable for prime time. Thank you, Robert. And thank you, Marianne. But anyway, he spent 3 years as Microsoft's technology evangelist for Windows. And now what he's saying is that he thinks that they should ditch the Windows Phone. He says the train has sailed, although it should be a ship that sailed. And he's now at Rackspace as their startup liaison officer. But what he says is the real answer is give up on the Windows Phone, go Android, embrace and extend like you did with the internet. But apparently he doesn't feel that Microsoft is listening to him. Well, for those of us who have been following Scoble for a while, I mean, he's a little bit fickle. I know for a while there he was one of the biggest Apple fanboys there is. And now he's recently been a droid bot. I don't know, what do you call somebody who loves Google? A droider? I don't know. But anyway, that's kind of the story, just about dropping the phone. I don't know if you guys... Should I just keep going?
Well, I think Apple. I think Robert Scoble does still love Apple. I think he still has an iPhone. He still uses it every day. I haven't seen him with an Android phone for a while. I don't think.
I think it's really good what he's saying. I mean, Microsoft need to consider that Android and Apple have that market tied up, and they've effectively got a market tied up because of things like apps. People don't buy phones these days because they're phones. They buy phones because they've got access to content. And Microsoft trying to get developers to produce content for their platforms hasn't really worked out. So I agree 100% with what Robert's saying. Go after, get the Android on there so that they can focus on marketing and things that they do really well. They haven't been, in the last decade or so, a company that produces great hardware, let's be honest. So, get them to do the marketing, get them to do the little things, license the Android software and go from there. And as you were saying, Jody, he has definitely become a lot more Android-centric. But I've spoken to him a few times about this, and he said he still uses Apple more or iPhones more simply because he's finding that most of the developers, when they create apps, they still tend to create their first alpha beta versions on the Apple, on the Apple ecosystem. And once they've got something working well, then they'll transpose that into an Android environment. I mean, that is changing. Android's obviously massively gearing up, and it's bigger now. But he's still finding a lot of people are building for Apple first, and I think that will change in the future. But it's great though that he's and other people in the industry are really embracing both platforms, so that we've got some really good competition and two really strong, providers out there.
What is Daniel? What's your view on this story?
I've actually got quite a big view on this because Scoble is quite a smart bloke. He's been uses the best device or operating system fit for purpose. So he basically bounces around. But it's probably not my choice that they would actually drop Windows Phone, because I actually like having a third sort of player in the market, at which basically Windows Phone is the third mobile OS at the moment, with BlackBerry sort of winding down and not as many sales at the moment. So it sort of drives innovation and stuff like that. And there's a lot of people out there that really like the Windows Phone platform, and they've got some great ideas. The thing that we sort of have to consider is that Microsoft is still making more money out of Android than they are out of Windows Phone, because they get a licensing fee off, I think it's like 90% of the manufacturers of Android devices in the world. So they're actually still making more money from Android than Windows Phone. So they can basically finance their entire Windows Phone operation just off Android already. So it makes no real financial sense for them to just drop it. They can really just coast along. And with their other businesses, they can sort of just take in money for that to prop it up until it actually, because Windows Phone adoption is actually growing. So there is some sort of merit to actually keeping with Windows Phone. And if they can actually get their own sort of vertical silo infrastructure like Apple has, that they can sort of do that. And with the recent purchase of Nokia, they've actually got a company which can do hardware. So they're sort of making moves. And in terms of like content and stuff like that, they're slowly getting companies. They got Instagram. They've got recently got Fitbit on board to actually support Windows Phone 8.1. So there's definitely moves there. They're sort of leveraging other sort of ecosystems in the background. So they've already got Xbox is one of the biggest content delivery systems in the world for entertainment. So they're sort of getting that sort of thing in for their Windows Phone store, so they can sort of do that sort of stuff. So I sort of think he's probably a bit wrong on that sort of front. I think they should continue, because having a third vendor there, I mean, if you leave Apple and Android alone, or Google alone, they might get complacent a little bit, and having that scrappy little 4%er who of the market share, because I mean, Android's something like 85% of the world's mobile OS market share now. So I would prefer to actually have a third vendor out there really pushing the platforms, and none of the other ones like Yola or BlackBerry or something like that really aren't doing much. So yeah,
okay,
personal preference, keep going really, Windows.
Yep,
really valid points, Daniel. The only question I've got though, and it's great, there's some really valid points in there, but the only question I've got is, if your ma and pa, or your someone behind the counter who's not really into tech goes to the shop and they buy a new Nokia, for example, because it's got a great camera, 30 megapixel or whatever, and it has the Microsoft Windows operating system, the person in the shop says, you know what, it's fine, it's great, go for it. But then they get home and they find that they don't have the access to apps as they would on Android or on an iOS phone. My only question there is, yes, it's sort of, it's the third runner in the market. They're kind of coming last by a little bit. But is it as good an experience for the end user who signs up to a 24-month plan? And what would Microsoft then, or Windows, need to actually do to try and make that a better experience? I mean, from a consumer perspective, that's the only thing that I fear, is that you've got, some girl in her mid-20s who works behind an office job and, isn't into tech like us, so doesn't have the same knowledge. Is she getting signed up to a 2-year poor experience potentially?
Absolutely, yeah, you're 100% right. But that's where you got to really rely on the actual sales assistants and stuff like that to really know what they're talking about. So if you're going to lay out that you want to use this sort of stuff on your phone, then if that doesn't exist in this person behind the counter sells it to you, you really got to sort of wonder about taking it back. But on Windows Phone, even though they don't have a lot of platforms, they've got a lot of third-party developers out there. Like, they sniff around all the APIs for the applications and actually basically rip them apart and make their own applications. So there's actually a lot of support out there for things that aren't officially on Windows Phone. So you can still get around a lot of the things. Like, there's quite a few YouTube apps, because Google's never released an official YouTube app and things like that. So there's sort of that sort of thing, but they break a little bit when the big vendors change their APIs. So there's periods where you can't actually access the services. But I agree with you. If someone sells you that and there's nothing in the store for it, then you'd probably be looking at taking the phone back, because there is grace periods on any of the phones you buy in stores. So take it back. That's my opinion. But they've got to stay on the marketplace to actually get anywhere. So
yeah, no, very good, very good.
All right, next story, Jodie.
All good information. Yeah. So, we talk about online privacy. Well, apparently Foxtel is applauding some government plans against online privacy. Foxtel welcomed a government discussion paper outlining recommended steps to support online privacy. Recommendations include ISPs issuing graduated warnings to users and throttling internet speeds for persistent offenders. In a press release titled Foxtel Applauds Government Action to Stem Online Privacy, Foxtel CEO Richard Freudenstein backed the government's move toward protecting copyright material. For example, Game of Thrones, that's been very, very popular in the U.S. And apparently one of the things that has been under consideration, the company offered a discount for subscriptions during Game of Thrones, but they held off screening key titles such as The Leftovers and Penny Dreadful. And not quite everything has been expressed from the U.S., which brings us to another story that expressed from the U.S. We are probably one of the best resources for high-quality movie making, some of the great productions of all time. And recently, one of the biggest hits, at least on social media, was featured as part 2. So those of you who remember that epic film Sharknado, well, evidently there is now Sharknado 2, and that just aired here in the U.S. And for the uninitiated, what this means is it's a tornado of sharks. So in Sharknado 1, the sharks were attacking Los Angeles. Well, in Sharknado 2, somehow this meteorological disaster moved to the East Coast, and it wreaked havoc on an unsuspecting New York City. What's kind of notable about this is that the first Sharknado premiered in July of 2013. It generated 5,000 tweets per minute at peak and hit 387,000 social mentions. So pretty crazy. But some of the cute things that people were saying, Gregory L. Vince said, and this was his tweet, "Okay, the Sharknado tweets are starting. I'm going to log off now and mourn the human race." So apparently it is very campy for those of you who haven't seen it. And I'm sure that this is one of those featured movies that they want to protect as part of this government initiative. Any comments?
No comments. Andrew, what's your view on that story, mate?
Okay. First up, just quickly, the Foxtel one. It's great that Foxtel are there and privacy for the internet and all that sort of stuff. I do agree that people downloading internet can, and it does interrupt I guess people's livelihoods potentially. Not so much the actors on $20 million a movie, but all of the guys behind the scenes. They sell this content to studios, for advertising dollars. So as soon as you start downloading, that's less people watching, less that they can sell it for, and so forth and so on. But it is a bit funny having Foxtel, who has such a huge, vested interest, coming out and saying that they support the government's plan on that. It is great, but it's a little bit funny, I guess. But as far as Sharknado 2, I watched all of Sharknado 1, and it was funny and scary and weird all at the same time. And Sharknado 2, I'm going to try and avoid it, but we'll see how we go. It's just, the first one's in LA in California, and the second one's in New York. That's pretty much the two places that the rest of the world know of America. It's either in LA or it's in New York. And from time to time, you hear about Seattle or Chicago or something like that. But everything has to be in LA and New York. What's with that?
Why can't it be in Australia?
Well, why can't it be just somewhere like, else in America or something? This happened down in Memphis. I don't know. It's always LA and New York.
Memphis. Or even Philadelphia. I'm outside of Philadelphia. Nobody cares about Philadelphia.
No, who cares about Philadelphia? Not since Rocky have we cared about Philadelphia. Yeah.
That's a good point, yes. And yes, I do need to come to Australia. You're on my bucket list. I will visit Australia.
Yeah. You're probably kicked out.
What about you? What's your view on that story?
Who, me?
Yeah.
I'm not sure about the Foxtail one, but the Sharknado, I wouldn't really call Sharknado epic, but it's just me. I admit there's some like campy movies that I've seen, like Toxic Avenger. I admit I did kind of like that for whatever reason. But the Sci-Fi Channel has been pumping out these weird monster movies. Not my favorites. I kind of once they started doing that and some other things, I kind of steered clear of the Sci-Fi Channel. But they do come out with some weekly series that are like Warehouse 13 and Eureka and things like that. They're very good programming. Not so much the monster movies. In fact, I'd rather watch some of the old 50 black and white monster movies. Even though their special effects are even campier, it still had the weird music and all that. But I don't know.
All right, what about you, Daniel? Do you have a view on that story, mate?
Foxtel really just. I'm not a fan of the way their practices. So I've sort of never. I've had Foxtel once in the past and ended up not actually watching it, so I cancelled it.
Okay.
But the whole thing about them coming out against online privacy is like a bit of like they sent us the press release and we sort of went, yeah, duh. Of course you're going to say that, but. Yeah. The whole government online piracy thing's a little bit distasteful as well because Turnbull's sort of done a complete backflip when the ISP case against IINet came out a couple of years ago. He was sort of all for it, going, yeah, of course the ISP shouldn't be responsible for pirates. And now suddenly he's turning around saying, oh, yes, they definitely should, and the government's going to get this decision overturned so that ISP is responsible for people downloading torrents and things like that. And downloading stuff is definitely not the way to go. But with things like Game of Thrones, people were really left with very little choice. I mean, you could pay Foxtel $20 a month just to view it, and you never got to keep the episodes. Whereas if it came out on things like iTunes, Google Play, and stuff like that, you pay for the season, and you can watch it over and over again, even after the season ends. So there was they've really got to address that sort of thing before they can start going after people through legal means and stuff like that. If the big companies and manufacturers of content aren't going to make stuff available at a decent price, then piracy is never going to end. And that's something the music industry learned and something that the actual film and TV industry really needs to take into account. That's my opinion. Yeah.
Also, that Turnbull guy, he's trying to shut down Channel 31 too, which is not good too, as well. Did you hear about that? Yeah,
he's definitely the Liberal government with their sort of lead up to the election, their plans and things for ABC and all that sort of stuff, all the smaller channels and programming. They have a lot of big talk, and it's sort of amounted to nothing really. So
they're really not for the arts. At the end of the day, Liberal government is for business and commerce, and not for the people in the arts. Exactly, and that's always been the way, and that's what they're showing at the moment, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, Jody, what's the next story? It's the last one, I think. One more, I think. Two more.
Yep. We've got an Apple update. Now Apple TV is updated with CNBC and Fox Now channels. Okay. 2 more channels. And that's pretty much the story. CNBC offers access to live stream of the financial channel, as well as on-demand clips from news segments and full episodes of the channel's prime content original series. Viewing requires authentication with one of a number of cable and internet providers. Let's see. Other than that, Fox Now includes on-demand access to a number of shows from the network, including 24, Live Another Day, Cosmos, A Spacetime Odyssey, Glee, and more. Authentication through a cable provider is required for full access to the content. That's pretty much the story. That's the news.
There's one more at the bottom there. Andrew added one about Snapchat.
Oh, okay, Andrew. It says, were you going to cover that, or you want me to cover that?
No, if you could cover it. Otherwise, basically all it was it's an article. I guess I'll cover it then. It's an article about Snapchat, and they've recently had a $10 billion valuation. Wow. And effectively, we heard some time ago that they were offered a buyout of $3 billion, I think, from Facebook. And then if I remember, there was another company, Google or someone else, offered them a $4 billion buyout, and they're currently talking with some Chinese investors about a $10 billion valuation investment. So people investing money at a $10 billion valuation. And the article sort of goes through, Snapchat is a company that has a lot of bums on seats, a lot of users, but they don't have any revenue. Their current revenue is 0.00. So it's sort of, they talk about other companies like Burger King. Burger King in the article, they say that they are flipping a lot of burgers every day around the globe, and they have a $10 billion valuation. And you've got a kid who's 22, sitting somewhere in Palo Alto, who's got a lot of users on a system, paying for servers, hasn't made a buck, and they've got the same valuation. And we need to look at what's sensibility and how and when and where we can actually monetize that. I mean, Facebook have a massive valuation, but they make money, and they're actually making more money constantly. And it's great that they're doing well, but not every startup or technology company, I call them a startup, I probably shouldn't, but not every technology company has the team that Facebook probably have, with people like Zuck, who was a very primary tech guy, and as social was sort of coming through, and then they've got a bunch of other really cool people in there as well. So it's I wonder if we're due for I hate to say it, another bubble burst, where you've got companies worth billions and billions of dollars that are not making any money, and that don't particularly have any monetization plans moving forward. And I think also with something like Snapchat, they have a really, really difficult market, I believe, for making money. It's sort of young consumers who are very anti-commercial these days. So it's going to be a challenge to see where they go.
I just don't understand where they come up with this kind of evaluation, though. I mean, is it really? You guys, I mean, do you use it? I mean, do you really feel that it's that?
Yeah, I use it every day. A lot of famous people. I've added a lot of famous people on there. It's really cool. That Tim West, good guy, he's on there and stuff. And
would you use it though if there was ads constantly running through it?
No, I would not, because ads sucks.
Well,
I dislike ads.
It's got a bad rap here. A lot of the people who work with teens and try to convince them how dangerous it is to post stuff that they shouldn't be posting.
Yeah.
To them, Snapchat is the antithesis of what they're hoping the kids are going to do, because I guess they have the feeling that when they put something out there, that it's going to go away, and there's ways around it, and it doesn't always go away.
Yeah, there is definitely. Definitely there is ways.
So so unfortunately, some kids who put stuff up that's inappropriate wind up getting in trouble.
Exactly. But yeah, do you use it, Steve?
Oh no, I haven't really used it, but I could see some startups and developers. They initially they just started out and make it for free in the App Store. They're trying to get as many people as possible to use it, and if it gets wildly popular, even some bigger companies like Facebook, Google will see that, because they can utilize that fan base and popularity for their own use, whether it be advertising or something like that. But so it still has some potential. Perhaps maybe that's why they value it so much. I'm not sure how many users use Snapchat or anything like that.
Andrew, what about this other app that from Facebook? That one.
Yeah, I think that what was it, Slingshot?
Slingshot. Yeah.
I don't know how many people are still using Slingshot, and I believe that Mobley have a competitor to Snapchat that has just launched, and I think there's another company as well.
Yeah.
Who are Instagram have got a competitor about to launch. So obviously this space that Snapchat are in is obviously a good space, and it's a young audience. But I don't know who else is going to be able to get in there with a Me Too product. I think it's going to be really difficult to do that. And I guess the evaluation really is built around how many users they have, and the metrics of how often those users are actually using the platform. I mean, what are your thoughts on this, Daniel?
Yeah, I've never really used Snapchat, but the sort of whole idea of tech companies getting billion-dollar valuations based on the amount of users and things like that, it's all based on in potential. And as you said, the tech bubble is probably due for a bit of a pop at the moment. But then you got to look at Twitter. I mean, Twitter really had trouble actually monetizing the way they were actually doing business and things like that. And it's now only that since they've gone public, they've started to actually gain a revenue stream and started to look into sort of monetization. They've actually started getting to the point where they are actually almost worth what they were valued at. So they're probably looking into things, but yeah, I sort of wouldn't be investing if I was sort of a venture capitalist. I wouldn't sort of be aiming at that. But then, as you said, the competitors are out there. So we've got Slingshot from Facebook, and then Instagram released Bolt the other day. So that's two services which are very similar, that are sort of Snapchat clones. So there's definitely a want by companies out there to make a Snapchat clone, and it's a great idea that's sort of got a lot of traction, but as to who's going to actually do it and whether it's actually going to be Snapchat themselves that monetize it in the end, it's a big question. So, yeah, I'm just not that sort of... If I had the money, I probably wouldn't be investing in them anyway.
Yeah. Well, we've actually considered doing a Snapchat clone at the Zafo offices. I mean, not a clone per se, but using some of, the functionality and the, destructive messages and things like that in an app. But at the end of the day, when you actually run through it, I think it's really difficult to gain market with a Me Too app, because people are going to look at it and say, I can use this one that all my friends are on, or I can use this new one that's effectively the same burger but with shaker fries instead of normal ones. I don't care that much about the shaker fries. I'm going to go here to where all my friends are, rather than, using this one that's 10% better. I mean, something Robert Scoble actually said to me some time ago was, when you release an app, it has to be 10 times better than your competition. 10% better. No one's going to change for 10%.
Good point.
Yeah, good point, Andrew. Good point, mate. Robert Scoble knows what he's talking about. Yeah. He puts out some good apps, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. He sure does. And he actually put out one... Sorry, Jody?
I was just saying he's smart, and he's very intuitive about what will and will not work.
Exactly, yeah.
He actually had WebTuner, a new product this week. He interviewed a company, I think from Seattle, called WebTuner.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
They have a new product that we were looking at, Brad, earlier this week, which is pretty cool, which basically they are looking to sell off to the big cable companies like Comcast and these sorts of things. And it's effectively like a USB that, you plug it into the power socket of your... in your home, just into any ordinary power socket, and then you can either run a HDMI cable out of it, you can also run a network cable out of it, and it also has Wi-Fi ability, and you can just run any TV straight through it, and it's literally about 1 inch squared. It plugs straight into your wall socket, run a HDMI out, and away you go. So it's got a few chips in there and everything. It has internet access that runs directly through it. I don't know how to do it, but it's a phenomenal little product. And if you look at things like cable companies and so forth, that they're going to absolutely buy this thing in bulk load, because they can send this out to someone. There's no technician required to install. They don't have $300 clunky boxes that they have to send out in the mail that fail, that have drives that break. So there'd be very little of that. And even if one does break, they just send you another one. It probably costs them $20, $30. They send you another one. It's easier than actually having a phone conversation or sending things backward and forward. And this was one, sorry, I just brought that up because we were talking about Robert Scoble and some of the innovative apps and technologies and things that he brings forward. So webtuner.com, I think.
Yep, that's it. I sent them an email the other day, Andrew, to get him on the show. So I'm waiting to hear back from them, so they may be on the show. So
yeah, and I believe, Brad, you're too humble to say it, but I believe you actually also spoke to your contact down at Foxtel this week about WebTuner. Yeah, and they are now talking to them also. So
yeah, sort of. Yeah, I'm not sure if they're actually talking to them, but I actually passed them on to them to give them an idea they may want to use, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. So there you go.
Yeah, so that's good. Jody, any more news stories?
Sorry, Ruger's barking. No, that's the news for today.
Good talking, Jody. Good on you. Well done, Edge Week, for the news stories.
Good as always. Thank you, Jody.
Spoke very well. Can we do the giveaway now, Andrew, at all? Or do you want to
Yep, we can. Actually, let's just do the interview first with Daniel. Have a bit of a chat to Daniel, and then we'll run the giveaway right at the end, if that's okay.
All right, cool, mate. Yep, no problem. Daniel Tyson, welcome to the show, mate.
Thanks a lot.
And tell us about what you do at Ausdroid.
Well, we essentially just report on everything Android with a real focus on what's happening with Android in Australia. So we've sort of hit up all the tablets and phones that sort of hit Australia and anything that sort of apps and hardware, really. We've sort of moved a bit into Chrome OS, the other sort of Google operating system. So, I mean, I've sort of almost completely moved across to Chrome OS. I still have a Windows machine at home, but for things like Skype. But generally, if I'm out and about, I'll have a Chromebook and sort of Chromebox at work to sort of do stuff. And yeah, so anything Android related or Chrome OS related in Australia, we want to know about it. So
what about the Chromecast? What about Chromecast?
Love the Chromecast. Big advocate of that. I had one of those on order the day they were announced, and yeah, so I've been using it for a fair while. It's just one of those little things that I think Apple perfected the one more thing, and Google sort of did that with their Breakfast with Sundar event last July, and it has basically taken off. It recently had its first birthday, and I think they said they've monitored 400 million Chromecast sessions, which they don't. Google never talk numbers about how many they've sold of a particular item, but we generally believe it's somewhere in the millions. I think someone estimated there was something like 2 or 3 million sold through Amazon alone, so that's a fairly big number.
Yeah, definitely it's a big number. Yeah, what sort of phone do you use at the moment? What's your favourite phone or tablet?
I always get Nexus phones, so I've got one of those, but at the moment I am currently reviewing the LG G3, which is their latest device. I think it actually launches on all 3 carriers on Monday. So,
nice one. Okay, good stuff.
Yeah, first phone with a 2K display, so it's Quad HD 2560 by 1440 resolution on a 5.5-inch screen, so it's pretty nice looking when you're looking at video.
Sure, okay. Andrew, any questions?
Yeah, tell us a little bit. We talk a lot about Mac on the show, but it's great to have you on to talk a little bit more about Android for some of our Android listeners. Tell us a little bit about the Android ecosystem and what's good at the moment and where it's sort of going, as far as, I guess, the technology and the operating system and devices and things like that. So give us a little bit of a chat about, I guess, where it's been and where you think it's going and, some of the sort of positive aspects from, I guess, a broader sense.
Well, Android is basically, as I said earlier, it's got 85% market share in the world now. So it's basically the dominant Android OS, the mobile OS at the moment. So where you tend to get people in the premium range, they'll generally get an iPhone or something like that, and then you've got the sort of Windows phone sort of tagging along where they can. Android just seems to be the go-to sort of operating system for most vendors because it's basically free. They can customize it however they want and produce a phone without too much fuss. I mean, even Nokia's actually released an Android phone. Amazon famously forked it and went with the Fire phone and all the Kindle tablets and stuff like that. So it's pretty easy to do. The big thing at the moment was actually announced at Google I/O because most of the actual world has got a phone. They sort of have as I said, iPhone, Android, Windows Phone, BlackBerry, whatever. But the next big thing in tech is all the companies generally talk about the next 5 billion, which is talking about getting into developing markets and things like that. And at Google I/O in June, Google sort of addressed that by announcing something called Android One, which is basically a hardware reference platform that they're going to start farming out to any sort of vendor who can create a mobile phone. And it essentially gives them sort of a platform that they just produce phones, and Google can then just push out updates to it. So it stays pretty much stock Android. There's no skins or anything like that, but it remains up to date. It gets the latest releases and stuff like that, and it's going to be cheap. So they're talking under $100 for sort of devices with a 4.5-inch screen, sort of 720p resolution display, and something fairly decent. Like, that's the next big thing in tech is the next 5 billion, and it's emerging markets, and Google's sort of really pushing to get in on that at the moment. So you're going to hear a lot more about Android One in the next few 6 to 12 months. I believe they're starting to launch in India in October, so that's really going to be the start, and I think that's going to be a pretty big thing. So
Daniel, you said that Android has an 85%, which is a big percentage of the world. Now, I take it a lot of that is obviously also with low-end phones, couple $100 phones as well for, I guess lower socioeconomic countries, India, perhaps some of the poor areas of China and things like that. Do you know what the sort of breakup is between the premium handsets, as you called it, like
It's very hard to track,
HTC One, your Samsungs and things? It's difficult to track that, sort of the S4 versus the iPhone 5, those sorts of things?
Samsung does release numbers. They quite happily sit there and they'll announce as they hit like the 20 million, 40 million, 50 million handset mark, like as they sell them. But generally getting numbers out of the other companies can be a little bit hard. But generally, Samsung has about 80%, about 80% of the Android market share and about 30% of the global market share in terms of handsets. So it's sort of hard to actually gauge how many, say, HTC Ones in the premium range is selling as opposed to like their HTC Desire range, which is their lower end sort of devices. But yeah, it's, as you said, the markets that they do well in are generally the sort of the everyday market. So you can walk out to like Coles and pick up an Android handset for like $30 sometimes. So it's definitely in the low end.
During the week, we actually went to Coles and picked up a 8-inch tablet for Android for $70 because we're doing some testing on a new app. And it's just phenomenal. It was literally $70. We bought a Nokia phone for $130 because we needed to test the Microsoft operating system. So we had a tablet and a phone for $200 to do some testing. Just, so on those lower end market, there's some really good quality, but sort of mid-range, cheaper stuff available. But yeah, it'd be really fantastic to sort of get a breakdown of that HTC One sort of, versus, your Galaxy S5 versus your iPhone 5S, that sort of thing. I think that'd be a fantastic metric. But, it's great, though, that Android are providing these great handsets also to, these real low entry cost handsets, which are putting technology in people's hands that otherwise, probably couldn't afford it 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, it's definitely the way that they're going. I mean, civilization sort of is growing, and they're finding that if you put technology in the hands of people, they're going to use it in new and innovative ways. And so if you're handing like a phone that can then be charged and stuff like that, get a basic internet access to a farmer in Kenya or something like that who's previously never had it, but has a magic idea that is just going to move the world, then that's great. And we need to do that. So that's sort of where the idea of the next 5 billion is going, and sort of there's no real point in having a $700 iPhone that they'll never be able to afford. They'll never be able to afford a data plan or anything like that. You've really got to get out there with the lower cost devices to get people who really can't afford that. And yeah, that's what sort of Google and even Microsoft to a lesser extent with now they've bought Nokia with the Azure line. So that's sort of the next thing you're going to really see in the mobile industry is the next 5 billion, and that's the concentration, because we're really reaching saturation point with mobile phone handset sales. Samsung themselves sort of had a bit of a lousy second quarter, they sort of regressed with the amount of handsets sold. So it's really at saturation point. I mean, most people will get off a new phone every 2 years. A lot more are changing over to a 12-month cycle. So as I said, saturation point on the sort of first world people is really reaching that saturation point where they really need to start looking at that next 5 billion and how they're going to monetize it. Google sort of did that with Motorola, with the Moto G and the Moto E handsets, which were really low cost, but absolutely fantastic experience on them. Like, I've even had Apple fans actually compliment the way that the Moto G runs. So it's that sort of thing that Google sort of decided on with the Moto, with the Android One, and probably when they decided to sell Motorola to Lenovo. So they've sort of decided to go against doing their own handsets and just releasing this reference device, which they can sort of just concentrate on what they're really good at, which is the sort of software. So yeah, that's the next 5 billion.
All right. Good stuff, Daniel. Good stuff. Jody, any questions?
Yeah, Daniel, what do you think of the wearables? Like, do you think we'll be moving in the direction like Google Glass, or do you think the watches? I mean, what's your take on it? What do you think they're going to take off, or are they just going to kind of be an also-ran?
Well, at the moment, Android Wear's just launched. We've had the Pebble around for a while, which was good. Like, I grabbed the Pebble when it came out, and it's sort of good for a certain thing. Android Wear takes it to that next level, but the current devices are a little bit sort of first generation. They sort of really need some work, and probably second, third generation are going to sort of in design because they're a little bit ugly, really. But things like the Moto 360 are coming out, which are look to be really, really nice design, and the Android Wear software is quite good, but it has room to move. So as what Google do is, instead of actually releasing like a product that they can then get developers develop stuff on before it's official launch like Apple does, they'll do something. They'll basically just release it, and then it's a work in progress from there. And that's essentially at the stage we're at. So it's really just a work in progress until we actually get things that developers can actually find better ideas. And in the first few days after Android Wear was sort of in the hands of developers, there was some really good stuff coming out, things like a little mini Wear launcher and different apps to sort of identify songs from your wrist. So that sort of thing, like wearables, the obvious thing is the wrist, but Google Glass is where a lot of people really want to try it, get it and stuff like that. But it's got its own inherent problems. So there's a lot of like feedback coming in from the US, like the people don't like glass holes running around. They're really scared of the camera and things like that. So there's a lot of blowback on at the moment with glass in the US specifically, because that's the only market it's really been available in. And the other thing is that they don't like the price. I mean, $1,500 for essentially a mobile phone you're going to stick on your face is it's a big ask to sort of fork out that money.
Crazy. It's too much.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. So once they can get that price down, I think there may be a little bit better adoption, and if they can address things like privacy concerns that the general day-to-day people have about the camera that's sitting on their face. I mean, I think it's a little unjustified in the way if you've ever interacted with glass, you got to actually you really got to say, okay, glass, take a picture and things like that. You can get things like the wink gesture to work to take a picture, but generally most people aren't going to be recording you, so that's sort of a bit unwarranted. But it's one of those things you just got to roll with the punches, and Google sort of has to address that before they get a more like wider adoption. But I'm keen as heck to try them out.
I was about to ask you. Have you tried out Glass yet, Daniel?
I've had about 3 opportunities to try it, but every time I've either been working or just haven't been able to get up to Sydney to sort of try them out. So I look forward to eventually getting to try them out. The other guys at Ausdroid, there's about 3 or 4 guys at Ausdroid that have actually tried them out, and they sort of said it's a good idea, but it's just not there yet. But that was a few iterations ago, because they're fairly active in updating the software. So it's one of those things that Google does, like literally just innovate the hell out of things. Like that's one of the things I like about Chrome OS, because you're essentially watching their desktop operating system evolve every 6 weeks. You get a new update, and it changes like major stuff in the operating system. So you get all this new functionality every 6 weeks. So and that's what Google is famous for. So I think they've got a lot of work to go.
You mentioned Sydney, Daniel, about Google. Are they in Sydney, have they?
Yeah, they've got a head office over there. They actually developed quite a few products there. They do a lot of things like Drive for Android was actually developed in Sydney.
Nice.
And a lot of the Google Maps stuff is actually done in the Sydney head office. So
good stuff.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of development coming out of Google in Australia, and it's quite a powerhouse, a nice place to visit if you can ever get in there. So you can sort of see the old monorail. They've got a couple of cars in there.
Oh, nice. So you can actually just walk in there and they give you a tour, or what?
No, you probably need to contact them first. Okay. But if you can ever arrange that, it's definitely worth a look. It's one of those things. The dream job would be to work in Google, just to sort of be in the building. It's one of those really nice offices.
Tour around them sort of places. They're going to be
good. If you can do it, definitely recommend it.
Yeah, for sure, mate. Steve, any questions for Daniel?
Yeah, I wanted to ask him about the next version of Android coming out. I heard like Android L or something like that.
Yeah, Android L. There's actually a preview out at the moment, which is if you've got a Nexus 5 or a Nexus 7 2013, you can actually download the ROM for it. I was stupid and actually downloaded the ROM for the Nexus 5 and put it on there. It's got a lot of bugs. It's as a day-to-day usage, it's really not ready to go yet. It sort of has problems with making calls, things like Wi-Fi and stuff like that. It's more just for designers to actually get their head around the material design aspect of what Google released at Google I/O, which is the next step of what Android will look like. So how it sort of people should have their apps and things like that look. Which if you use a lot of the intents and stuff within Android at the moment, automatically, like you don't go design your own interface and stuff, then you won't really have to change much. It's actually automatically in the sort of underlying elements, but it's really beautiful. Like they've actually gone a lot of the way into designing how it looks, how it feels, how you interact with a virtual interface, and so without actually using it, it's hard to explain, but it's sort of like got a tactile nature, so it's got depth to it, so you can actually put a Z-axis in as to how far a button will appear above your sort of layout, and it's quite interesting to look at, so definitely worth having a look at the material design, and I think it's going to really wow a lot of people who've sort of talked about Android's lack of look and feel and good design principles. And that material design is actually going to roll out across all of Google's sort of properties. So you're going to see it in their web interface, you're going to see it in Chrome OS, you're going to see it in Android. And it's really one of those things that they've sort of gone to a long way. Matthias Duarte is the head designer behind that, and he's really done a really nice design and a lot of back-end stuff on the way they actually came about making those design decisions. So really worth having a look at if you can get a look at it. But if not, it probably should be launching on the next Nexus in around about October or November.
Nice one, mate. All right, where can they get hold of you if they want to ask you any questions? I know I passed your email address to someone else the other while back, and they shared a problem with her phone. Did she end up getting it fixed?
Not sure. We sort of stopped responding, so I asked her a couple of questions and she stopped responding, so I'm not really sure. I should follow up on that. But yeah, I'm always on Twitter. I'm at Frog Hollow with a PH, because why not? And I'm actually more on Google+. I'm really never on Facebook, so if you can get me, I'm on Twitter, and I'm plus Daniel Tyson on Google+. So
nice one, mate. And you also do a podcast as well.
Of course, we do indeed. We're sort of nowhere near your grand 299 or going under 300 episodes next week. We've only just done our 119th episode, so
that's good, mate.
Yeah, but we'll get there one day.
Yeah, that's good. Good on you. How many people do it with you each week?
It's generally me and Jason. We try to have a guest on every week, and if no one's available, we generally get one of the other guys who writes on the site, like Scott or Jeff or something like, or even Phil. But look, we occasionally get people like Ev Blass from EV Leaks, who does a lot of leaking on phones and tablets and computers and stuff like that. We had him on this week. So yeah,
good one.
Just nice to chat.
Do you ever follow any stuff in the US about Android? Do you follow any Android in the US or podcasts?
Oh, we always do. We sort of interact a lot with people like Android Central, Phil Nickinson. He's been on the podcast. We've talked to the guys at Android Police, Artem, and stuff like that. So they sort of talk to us all the time. Yeah, we're definitely very, very into the US, because that's obviously where a lot of the news is coming from.
Yeah, definitely. Andrew.
Brad, how you doing?
Good, mate.
Good. I've just conversed with Christy. Unfortunately, young Miles is sleeping at the moment, but she has just put her hand in the hat and pulled out a name for our QuickFlix free 3-month subscription and a free Chromecast.
Okay.
And the winner is, do we have a drum roll? No,
Steve, drum roll?
Oh,
Steve?
I don't have that sound effect.
We don't have that. David Rossi. Congratulations, David Rossi. We will be contacting you during the week to get your details so that we can send out to you your Chromecast device and hook you up with the voucher code for your 3-month QuickFlix subscription. Thank you to Stephen down at QuickFlix for their support for that one. They're a friend of the show, and we certainly recommend that if you didn't win, that you still go down there and jump on, and they have a free evaluation period. So go and check out the product and service that they have. But congratulations again to David Rossi. We'll be in touch with you during the week to get you out your new Google Chromecast.
Well done, David Rossi. He supports the show each week, and good on him.
Oh, great, good stuff. That's really fantastic.
The Chromecast and the QuickFlix. Andrew, what's your final review on the show, and where can I get hold of you, mate?
It's been great to have you on, Daniel. You seem like a real knowledgeable person around the Android ecosystem, which is really healthy to have on the show, because we do talk about Apple and iPhones a lot. So thank you very much for being on.
Anytime.
And you can get me on the Zarfo app at Andrew, and you can get me on Twitter and Facebook at Cunning Drew. And make sure you jump on for the Rewind app. We're ready to go in about a week and a half from now. That's rwndapp.com. So there you go. Just a
Sweet.
Cheeky pull at the end there, Brad.
Can't wait, mate. Next week. So next week people can get it, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. We're about a week and a half away. We'll be doing, towards the end of this week, we'll actually, in about pretty much a week from now, we'll be doing our beta send out. So to all those people who have put their name in the list, there's quite a few of them in there. So yeah, really looking forward to it. It's just a fun I guess, Jason Nunnally, who is our US person, basically said that it's all of the silliness of Yo, but with the, I guess the proven ability of something like a Tumblr. So
Exactly.
we're working on Android as well with that. So I'll certainly keep you in the loop, Daniel, with the Android version when that's available as well.
And I think Jodie will
Yeah,
is up too. I think she'd love it with the dogs and stuff, and it'd be good to. You should.
Yeah, exactly. So
back end.
no, it'd be a lot of fun. So it's very simple, very very clean, very easy.
You probably
I
have
won't say too
news
much
next
more
week.
about it for now because we'll let you guys know.
You'll have more news next week, right?
Exactly.
On the show next week. 200 show next week. Can't wait.
300 show. It's going to be
can't wait.
fantastic. Really looking forward to it.
Same, me too. You can get me on Twitter at Brad Oz and Techwebcast. Jodie, what about you?
You can find me on Twitter as Sunswept and find me just about everywhere else as either Jodie Rains, or you can find me at my website, which is webmarcom.net.
And also your podcast as well. You mentioned your podcast as well.
I have a podcast that's called A2SM, or Addicted to Social Media. And I've also been co-hosting with Seth Goldstein on his new podcast, which is Social Media Addict. So, kind of a theme there.
All right. You're looking forward to next week.
Absolutely.
It's going to be a big show. Steve, what about you?
Look forward to having Daniel with us talking about his Android website, his thoughts on some of the topics that we discussed today. And you could find me on Twitter as Chatterbox_live. And, of course, the live version of the Tech Webcast, my own show, Chatterbox Live, on justin.tv/Linux Cool Dude.
All right. Good stuff, Steve. And appreciate your help over this year. And you've done all the video and stuff, mate. Good stuff.
Oh, yeah. It's been a long time, hasn't it? How
You've
many
been on
years?
here for a long time, haven't you?
Yeah, like 2.5 years now. Maybe
You and
3 years.
Jodie, and been never left.
Yeah, we're still here.
Yeah, still here.
We'll never leave. Okay. I'll never leave you, Brad. Okay.
Thanks, Steve.
They keep trying to get rid of us, you know?
You can leave now.
No, and you do a fantastic job too, as Brad just said, with the Justin TV and the video stuff. So that's
Yeah,
really
try
great.
to,
I'm sure
yeah.
the guys out there listening appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely. I think the video is a really good thing if you want to watch into video podcast. And that you can see all the news stories and stuff and that sort of thing.
Yeah, of course.
That's yep. That's it, Andrew.
That is it. So thank you for being on the show, Daniel, and Brad, Steve, and Jodie. Thanks again. As always, it's been fantastic. A great show, and to have you on, Daniel. And next week, Brad, what show number is that next week?
300.
300. There you go.
There you go. How long you been on, Andrew? How long you been on?
I think about a year. About
Wow.
maybe about a year now. Maybe just over actually. Year and a half, something like that.
That is fantastic. All right, catch you next week, guys. Thanks, Daniel, for being on, mate. If you're free next week, come on and have a talk with us again if you want.
Awesome.
Join in the fun. Thanks.
Cheers.
Techwebcast. The hosts and guests are unsurpassed. Techwebcast. 'Cause technology, it moves so fast. Techwebcast. Ha, stick around and you're gonna have a blast. Yeah! Techwebcast. Ha, ha. Techwebcast. Big ups to Andrew, to Brad, Jodie, Steve, and Jennifer. Boom!